Chelsea fans, welcome back to the Blues Hub. We have a huge Chelsea transfer story today. Xabi Alonso could be ready to let Enzo Fernandez leave Stamford Bridge, with Manchester City linked, while Chelsea are reportedly looking at Morgan Gibbs White as a potential midfield replacement. Could Gibbs White be the next big addition to Alonso's Chelsea project, and could Enzo really be on his way out? Stay with us as we break down everything you need to know. Don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on notifications. Let's get into it. Chelsea could be preparing for one of the most dramatic midfield decisions of the summer as Xabi Alonso considers reshaping his squad and Morgan Gibbs White emerges as a potential target at Stamford Bridge. The situation surrounding Enzo Fernandez has become increasingly interesting, with reports and speculation suggesting that the Argentine midfielder could be one of the major names whose future is reviewed as Alonso begins to put his own stamp on the Chelsea squad. At the same time, Morgan Gibbs White has emerged as a player who could offer Chelsea a different profile in midfield and attack, potentially giving Alonso the creativity, movement and versatility he wants in his new-look team. The possibility of Chelsea allowing Enzo Fernandez to leave while attempting to sign Gibbs White would represent a significant change in direction. Enzo arrived at Stamford Bridge as one of the most expensive midfielders in football and was expected to become one of the foundations of Chelsea's project. Gibbs White, meanwhile, has developed into one of Nottingham Forest's most important players and has attracted attention because of his ability to operate between midfield and attack. If Chelsea were to pursue this strategy, the two situations would be separate transfers rather than a direct swap, but they could become closely connected from a sporting and financial perspective. Chelsea would first need to determine whether Enzo is genuinely available, whether Manchester City are prepared to make a serious approach, and whether a suitable financial package can be agreed. At the same time, Chelsea would have to establish Nottingham Forest's position on Gibbs White, understand his valuation and convince the player that Stamford Bridge is the right destination for the next stage of his career. None of those steps would be simple, but the potential consequences could be enormous. The arrival of Xabi Alonso has changed the atmosphere around Chelsea. The club are no longer simply continuing the same project under another manager. Alonso is expected to evaluate the squad through his own tactical lens, and that means some players who are considered central to previous plans could find themselves facing uncertain futures. Chelsea have accumulated a huge number of players over several transfer windows, and managing that squad will be one of Alonso's biggest challenges. The manager needs to establish a clear identity. He needs players who understand positioning, movement, spacing and possession. He needs footballers capable of operating in different areas of the pitch without losing tactical discipline. He also needs a squad that is small enough to manage effectively while still being strong enough to compete across domestic and European competitions. That is why potential departures are just as important as potential arrivals. Enzo Fernandez is naturally one of the biggest names in that discussion. His reputation remains extremely high. He is a World Cup winner, an experienced international midfielder, and a player with excellent technical ability. His passing range, vision, and ability to dictate play make him an attractive option for elite clubs. But the fact that a player is talented does not necessarily mean that he is guaranteed to remain at a club when a new manager arrives. Football is constantly changing. Tactical requirements change, squad structures change, managers have different ideas, players' roles evolve. Chelsea therefore have to decide what kind of midfield they want under Alonso and whether Enzo is the ideal player to lead that midfield. That is where Morgan Gibbs White becomes such an interesting possibility. Gibbs White is not a conventional holding midfielder. He does not play the same role as a deep-lying defensive midfielder whose main task is to protect the defence and control possession from the base of midfield. His strengths are more advanced. He can receive between the lines, carry the ball, create chances, combine with attacking players and move into dangerous positions. For Chelsea, that could provide a different attacking dimension. One of the problems elite teams frequently encounter is breaking down opponents who defend with a compact low block. Possession alone is not enough. A team needs players who can receive the ball in difficult areas, turn under pressure, accelerate the attack and create something unexpected. Gibbs White has the technical ability and creativity to perform those functions. He is also familiar with Premier League football. That matters. Chelsea would not be bringing in a player who needs to learn the physical and tactical demands of English football from the beginning. Gibbs White has already played important matches in the Premier League and has developed into one of Nottingham Forest's most influential players. His versatility would also appeal to Alonso. Gibbs White can operate as an attacking midfielder, play centrally or move into wider areas depending on the tactical system. That flexibility could allow Alonso to change the structure during matches without necessarily making a substitution. A player capable of moving between positions can be extremely valuable in a possession-based system because he can create numerical advantages and open spaces for teammates. However, Chelsea would have to negotiate carefully with Nottingham Forest. Forest know the importance of Gibbs White to their team. He is not simply another squad player. He has become one of the faces of the club's project and one of the players' supporters identify with. His importance gives Forest a strong negotiating position. Chelsea could therefore not assume that making contact would automatically lead to a transfer. The club would need to understand Forest's valuation. They would need to decide whether the asking price is reasonable. They would also need to consider how the payment would be structured and whether bonuses or performance-related clauses could be included. For Chelsea, the financial side of the operation would be especially important if Enzo Fernandez were to leave. A sale of Enzo could potentially generate a significant amount of money. If Manchester City were to make a serious offer, Chelsea could use the proceeds to finance part of a new midfield strategy. That would not necessarily mean that Chelsea would spend every pound received from Enzo on Gibbs White, but it could make the restructuring financially easier. The situation would therefore involve two separate negotiations. Manchester City would have to negotiate with Chelsea for Enzo. Chelsea would have to negotiate with Forest for Gibbs White. There would be no automatic swap, but from Chelsea's perspective, the timing of the two operations could become connected. If Enzo leaves first, Chelsea would immediately need to consider how to replace the qualities he provides. If Alonso believes Gibbs White can contribute more effectively to the specific system he wants to implement, the Forest midfielder could become a major target. That would represent a bold decision. Enzo has already established himself at the highest level. Gibbs White would be arriving with a different profile and different responsibilities. Comparing the two players directly would therefore not always be fair because they do not necessarily perform identical roles. Instead, Chelsea would be comparing two different approaches to midfield construction. One approach would retain Enzo and build around his passing, technical quality and ability to control possession. The other would involve moving toward a more dynamic and attack-oriented midfield where Gibbs White could operate closer to the forwards and contribute directly to chance creation. The decision would ultimately belong to Alonso and the Chelsea hierarchy. If Alonso believes that Enzo fits his tactical plans, there would be little reason to sell him simply for the sake of changing the squad. But if he believes another profile is required, Chelsea could be prepared to make difficult decisions. That is one of the realities of taking over a club with a huge squad. A manager cannot keep every player happy. There are limited places in the starting 11. There are registration limits. There are financial considerations. There are also tactical considerations. Chelsea have invested heavily in young players, and the club now has to turn that investment into a coherent team. Alonso's job is not simply to collect talented footballers. His job is to create a structure in which those players complement one another. This is why squad management could become one of the defining aspects of his first season. A large squad can appear to be an advantage, but it can also create significant problems. Too many players can mean too much competition for the same positions. Players can become frustrated if they are not playing. Training groups can become difficult to manage. Registration decisions become complicated. The manager has to communicate constantly with players who may not have a clear role. For Alonso, reducing the squad could therefore be just as important as strengthening it.